Hello, and welcome to Matters of Merit, an ongoing video series featuring conversations with Meritas President Sona Pancholi and thought leaders from our network and the legal community. Each 20-minute edition offers practical insights on compelling and timely topics.
Hello, and thank you again for joining me. Today, our guest is Linda Kelly, Senior Vice President of Legal and General Counsel and Corporate Secretary at the National Association of Manufacturers. I'm especially excited that Linda is here because her association, NAM, is one of Meritas's strategic partners. NAM represents 14,000 member companies in every industry sector, and Meritas is pleased to be a partner for the organization in providing legal services for the largest manufacturing association in the United States. Specifically, we are partnering with the organization's Manufacturers Compliance Institute to give NAM members access to world-class attorneys from our Meritas member law firms in 253 markets worldwide. Because manufacturing employs more than 12.3 million men and women and contributes $2.3 trillion to the US economy annually, legal issues are always present and can be complicated and ever-changing. We're thrilled to be a part of answering some of those questions. And today I'm really thrilled to welcome Linda and have her tell us a little bit more about the organization. So Linda, I thought I might start by asking you to tell us a bit about your background and your role at NAM. And in doing so, perhaps you can explain for those who may not know how NAM supports the manufacturing industry and the role of MCI as well.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And thanks for having me today, Sona. So my background is I've been a Washington lawyer for most of my career. I was with a firm for a few years, but primarily I've served in counsel roles for various DC-based associations. And so that's the world I know. That's my background. So through that background, I have quite a bit of member service orientation. So I've brought that to the NAM, and in my role here as general counsel, not only do I think about and worry about the legal issues that confront us as a nonprofit advocacy group, but also we are in a great position to see across the manufacturing sector and to understand what some of the trends, legal trends are that are affecting our membership. So really the purpose of the NAM is to advocate on behalf of manufacturers in many, many different ways and many forums to ensure that manufacturing in the United States can thrive. And our members, as you said, come from all different sectors of manufacturing, from pharmaceutical to autos to the companies that make the components that go into those products, and then lots of the service providers that assist the manufacturing sector as well are among the members. And one of the chief ways that we support manufacturing is through supporting a policy environment in Washington that will be positive and allow manufacturing to thrive here in the U.S. And so that is concerning everything from tax and labor policy to international trade. 96% of consumers are outside of the U.S. So even though our members are U.S. manufacturers, they run global operations. And even tiny mom and pop size manufacturing concerns here in the U.S. rely on a global supply chain. So trade is consistently an issue of concern for us. And then just a general regulatory environment, whether it be SEC regulation or environmental regulation, kind of runs the gamut. So we might lobby for a member, we might advocate with a regulatory agency, and then we, as the legal arm of the NAM, advocate for our members in the courts. And And then we also convene them to share benchmarking and best practices, and also to help provide them with connections to expert legal advice when they need it, and when experts here at the NAM can't necessarily help with their particular situation. So that's really why we started the Manufacturers Compliance Institute. We have members, of course, that have extensive internal legal departments, but most of our members are actually small to mid-sized companies, and they may or may not have even a general counsel on staff. So for them, when they're confronted with an issue where they need legal support, it's hard if you don't already have a relationship established to know where to go to get the right kind of advice, to find the right kind of expert, and to get the appropriate support that you need. And so we've tried to be that connector for them through the Compliance Institute, by sort of serving an intake role to understand what the problem is, and then feeding those issues out to legal experts who can deal with those situations.
Great. And so, well, obviously with that, you've spent a lot of time talking to your members and to some of their legal counsel, I would imagine. Can you maybe share with us some of the key issues that those general counsel have been raising, particularly during the pandemic? What are some of the top things you're hearing about from them?
Absolutely. Well, it's quite obviously been a very extraordinary 15-month period for all of us. But certainly the manufacturing sector has been right at the very center of a lot of the action, if you will, during the pandemic, since we are the sector who makes the personal protective equipment, that manufactures the pharmaceutical products, that makes the medical supplies, and food, energy, all of the things that we've needed. Those all come from the members that we represent. And so over the last year, it's really been a flurry of sorting through a constantly shifting legal and regulatory environment, simply for our members to keep operating. At the outset of the pandemic, there was a lot of focus on who was essential, what industries were essential, and what industries were going to be allowed to continue operating as states started to implement various lockdowns in order to slow the spread of the pandemic. And so during that phase, our entire staff was very focused on helping clarify what the law and the operating rules were in the various operating locations of our member companies, as well as advocating to allow them to keep running if they had something that was truly essential to help Americans through this time. So as things have kind of shifted from staying up and operating, now there are a ton of labor and employment legal issues that are on everyone's minds. Everything from what safety measures need to be taken in the workplace, on top of the safety measures that are already required to operate a manufacturing plant, and what occupancy, what spacing on the shop floor. And of course, now that we have access to vaccines, there are tons of questions around what can be required, what kinds of questions can you ask employees, and it's been a very busy time, and be providing legal support to the manufacturing community. I think some of those labor and employment questions are going to continue on even now that we're in a recovery phase, for a couple of reasons. One is that it is on a weekly basis sometimes difficult to know what the rules are, and there are so many different overlapping jurisdictions
Right.
providing guidance and setting the rules. And then we have at the federal level, OSHA continuing to consider finalizing an emergency temporary standard to outline some workplace safety requirements that will apply anew to everyone who's out there working. To layer on top of that, there is a really critical shortage of qualified labor to actually work in these manufacturing jobs. And as our members are really trying to recover and ramp back up as we come out of the pandemic, they're having a very hard time finding workers. So even issues such as immigration have become more and more critical to ensure we have the workforce here that we need for our companies to keep running.
Yeah, I have family that is in the industry, and so I know I can personally relate to what you're identifying there. So maybe pick up from that, and what are you all at NAM foreseeing under the Biden administration? Things changing? What are you kind of telling your members as far as where you see things evolving over the next 4 years?
So for one thing, just on a very broad level, to a certain degree, the new administration has brought a bit of a return to a more predictable and I would say stable sort of regulatory approach. So it's more of an approach that we've been used to in the past, where we know what's coming before it comes.
Nice change.
And I won't say more about that, but it's just simply been more predictable so far, and I imagine it, I expect it to continue to be. We do expect there to be a more robust regulatory approach to our members' operations. There is a big focus on changes to labor laws to facilitate union organization, for example, that Congress is considering, and that eventually will be at the regulatory agencies, but is that's been a very prominent sort of plank of the new administration's policy agenda from day one. We also expect to see more of a focus on ESG issues, and not only from the SEC, but I think a lot of the other agencies are starting to think more broadly about those issues, what their roles might be on ESG. So again, we just expect a more active regulatory environment. And then the other really kind of big area that is a priority for the new administration is changes to the tax code. That is, it's coming up right now in the context of a debate on infrastructure and a big infrastructure bill that needs funding. And we're all for infrastructure. We think that the country really needs to make major investments in our infrastructure. So we've been supportive of that, but we are concerned about the focus on raising taxes on our members to pay for that. And so that is something that we are looking at on a daily basis here. And just running the numbers and analyzing various proposals in order to show what the impact would be on our sector. So, all that said, I'm happy to say that the new administration is very supportive of manufacturing and has had an open door and a listening ear for us and for our sector. And so, while we expect to be busy discussing maybe some disagreements on some regulatory approaches, we do find that we've been able to constructively engage, and so we would expect that to continue going forward.
Great. Well, that's actually a great place. I was hoping maybe the last couple of questions, particularly since we are trying to collaborate with you all and we want our members to be able to be supportive, if we could think a little bit about, with that in mind, the relationship between the manufacturing companies, their legal counsel, their business leaders, and the outside counsel services that they need. And do you see that those needs or expectations from outside counsel are changing? Are there different skill sets or expertise that you're hearing from your members that they need perhaps from my members?
Sure. I think the biggest trend I would mention is that I've really seen a shift in the focus of in-house counsel on finding firms that are going to be creative business partners to the companies, and that they're not looking necessarily for a firm that is going to just provide rifle shot support. They're really looking to build a business relationship. Of course, it's no surprise to anyone in the legal industry that there are, there are a lot of cost pressures on manufacturing, and so they're also looking for firms that are willing to be creative with them in structuring alternative fee arrangements. And I guess finally, I would say that I have, like no other time in my legal career, I've seen a focus from in-house counsel on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really a focus on that issue, not only internally, but with all of their vendors and suppliers, and the legal industry is no exception. So I think, firms that want to serve the manufacturing industry should know what their strategy is for DE, and be able to articulate it to prospective clients. And that's, obviously that's a trend that's affecting every sector.
Yeah, we're certainly hearing that from a wide range of companies and different types of law firms as well, I think, as they try to grapple with that. So this may be related to what I just asked, but are there specific challenges that general counsel have articulated to you that they face when they look to hire or work with outside counsel, things that we might do better or do differently as we approach working with your members, for example?
So I think that actually, I think one of the big advantages of partnering with Meritas is that you have a network of firms that are familiar with the areas where not the topic areas, but the actual physical areas and the court systems where they're working. And it's really invaluable to general counsel to be able to hire firms that have good relationships and that have firm knowledge of the local legal environment and people, the players, and the culture. And that's certainly something that our general counsel are focused on. I guess the other thing I would say is they're no longer willing to pay for lawyers to learn an issue on their dime. So they want to know that whoever they're hiring already has the expertise to do what they need, and is going to be able to do it. So I think, that certainly that's another advantage of working with a legal network, because you can find somebody who's an expert on any issue. It's not true of every firm, even the mega firms that kind of surround me where I'm sitting here. So and I think I think, certainly what I appreciate as a general counsel is if I'm interviewing firms to help me with an issue, if they don't really have the expertise, I so appreciate it if they are just straightforward with me and send me,
Mhm.
or if they send me to somebody that does, because it can be very frustrating to
Sure.
feel like you are, so financially supporting somebody's training rather than getting legal advice that you need.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that I'm hearing more and more as we talk to other general counsel as well. And it goes back to what you said earlier about being good business partners, right? And just sort of looking out for the other person and not just trying to solve only the legal questions. So
Yep.
that makes a lot of sense. Well, this has been terrific to get your perspective and to learn a little bit more about NAM. I really appreciate your time, Linda. Thank you so much for talking to me a little bit.
It's been my pleasure, Sona. Thank you.
Absolutely.
On behalf of Meritas, thank you for joining us today. Find this week's recording and more on-demand content in the News and Insights section of the Meritas website, www.meritas.org. Meritas is an established global alliance of closely connected yet independent law firms that each offer a full range of high-quality specialized legal services. We were built upon a rigorous system for monitoring and enhancing the quality of our member firms and have been connecting clients with carefully qualified business legal expertise in over 250 markets around the world since 1990.